Hello from Jonathan and from me. Welcome to Thursday's Anglia Tonight.
First tonight, a coroner's been told how a 70-year-old man was killed by a painkiller overdose administered by an out-of-hours locum from Germany.
David Gray from Mainey in Cambridgeshire was suffering from kidney stones when he was given a fatal injection by Dr Daniel Ubani, who was on his first shift in this country.
Well, today, Mr Gray's partner said Dr Ubani seemed tired and dithery and was muttering to himself. Well, our reporter Matthew Hudson was at the inquest and joins us now. Matt.
Well, yes, Jonathan, this is a case that's really focusing minds on how out-of-hours medical services are provided. In this case, a woman phones her GP because her partner is in excruciating pain. It's the weekend. She doesn't get through to the GP. She doesn't get through to the primary care trust. She doesn't even get through to NHS Cambridgeshire. She gets through to a private company that's providing the service. They send over a German doctor who speaks very little English. A matter of minutes later, her partner is dead. Is it any wonder that a lot of people attending this inquest want some answers? David Gray's sons, Stuart and Rory, arriving for the first day of their dad's inquest, nearly 2 years after his death. Mr Gray, who was 70, died at home in Mainey, Cambridgeshire in February 2008. He had been given a massive injection of diamorphine, 10 times the correct dose, by a locum doctor.
We can't bring my dad back, but if we can change things for the better, then at least something good has come out of all this tragedy.
The drug was given by German doctor Daniel Ubani, who had arrived in this country just hours earlier. He was working for Take Care Now, a company which provided out-of-hours medical care on behalf of the Primary Care Trust. Mr Gray's partner, Linda Bubb, told the inquest the doctor was hard to communicate with, seemed to be dithering and was muttering to himself. Miss Bubb said she told Dr Ubani that Mr Gray normally received 100 milligrams of pethidine from his GP to ease his chronic kidney pain. Dr Ubani didn't have any pethidine and gave the patient 100 milligrams of diamorphine. Mr Gray thanked him, shook hands and then died less than an hour later. Dr Ubani later received a suspended prison sentence and a fine by post from a German court. Mr Gray's family is pursuing a civil case against him. Rosamond Rhodes Kemp is a solicitor specialising in medical cases.
This is one of the areas of increased litigation because, unfortunately, the standard of out-of-hours doctors does not seem to equate to the standard that you might necessarily get in your local GP, not least because often the doctor has no knowledge of the patient at all, and quite frequently English may not be their first language.
The coroner, William Morris, said one of the purposes of an inquest was to try to prevent tragedies happening again. In a statement today, NHS Cambridgeshire says, since the incident, we have consulted and re-tendered for a new county-wide provider run by local GPs. We expect their contract to start in April, and we will monitor their performances very closely. This case has raised serious questions about the use of foreign doctors to cover evening and weekend shifts. The inquest is also looking at the circumstances surrounding the death of 87-year-old Iris Edwards, who also died shortly after being treated by Dr Ubani.
Matthew, is the inquest expecting to hear from Dr Ubani?
Well, it was, Becky. He was due to give evidence tomorrow, but I can tell you that the coroner's court has heard nothing from him. I think it's highly unlikely that he will turn up. However, there has been correspondence from the German authorities. They say that because when he went back to Germany, he voluntarily said what had happened, that he had inadvertently killed someone. He received this suspended sentence, he received a fine, and he is now clear to continue practising as a doctor in Germany, and I'm told that that's exactly what he's doing.
Matthew, thank you. Now, the dangers posed by venturing onto frozen water have been illustrated again in the most tragic fashion after a woman died by falling into a freezing lake in Essex.
It happened last night at Dobbs Weir Park at Nazing near Harlow. It's thought the woman had been trying to rescue her boxer dog. Tom Barton sent us this report.
What look like footprints can still be seen on the ice at the Glenfarber Lake near Harlow in Essex. It was here that yesterday evening a woman's body was pulled from the frozen water. It's thought that she'd ventured onto the ice after her boxer dog. The woman, who's not yet been identified, was recovered from the lake shortly after 6 p.m. yesterday, 3 hours after the alarm was raised.
We sent ambulance crews from Loughton, Harlow, Hoddesdon and Stevenage to the scene. We assisted the fire service and a diving team for almost 3 hours, where sadly we retrieved a lady about 6:15 p.m. yesterday evening. We tried desperately to resuscitate her at the scene, and she was rushed to an awaiting trauma team at the PA Harlow Hospital, where sadly she died.
The tragedy mirrors a series of similar incidents across the country over the past 3 weeks. 4 days ago, a 51-year-old man died after falling through ice on the River Tees at Stockton. He'd gone onto the river after his dogs. Last week, 2 brothers died after falling into a lake at Watermead Country Park near Leicester. And last month, at Brightwells Lake near Ringstead in Northamptonshire, wildfowlers Paul Litchfield and Philip Sturridge died after apparently going into the icy water to rescue a dog. The ice here looks thick. In fact, it is thick. This piece I found is more than 1 inch deep. But even ice that looks thick is very rarely able to support the weight of a person.
This tragic incident shows just how dangerous it is to go onto frozen water, and we'd plead with people not to do that under any circumstances. And if people are out walking their dogs, especially in areas like this, please keep them under control, please keep them on the lead.
Essex police have handed the details of this tragic death to the coroner. An inquest will be opened in due course. Tom Barton, Anglia News at Nazing near Harlow.
A court's been told that a man whose limbs were found scattered across Hertfordshire and Leicestershire was murdered by being stabbed in the back. The dismembered remains of 49-year-old Geoffrey Howe from North London were discovered last year. Today, Home Office pathologist Simon Poole told St Albans Crown Court that Mr Howe was stabbed in the back, with the weapon passing through to his chest. Stephen Marshall, who's 38, and 21-year-old Sarah Bush both deny murder.
2 young men who murdered a terminally ill father of 3 from Suffolk have today been sentenced to life in prison. 55-year-old John Vry was walking through an alleyway near his home in Lowestoft when he was brutally attacked in December last year. Well, today at Ipswich Crown Court, James Killingback, who's 23, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 19 years, and Aaron Breffett, who's 17, was jailed for life with a minimum of 12 years.
A soldier from Essex was killed when a single bullet struck him in the head during an attack by insurgents on his camp in Afghanistan, an inquest in Southend has heard. 26-year-old Lieutenant Aaron Lewis from Rochford died in December 2008 in central Helmand. His former commanding officer today explained that he was shot by a freak bullet that penetrated the camp before he was able to put his helmet on. He described it as a 1 in a million round. A narrative verdict was delivered.
Now,